This week's message from the angels is called Where We Are From, and it is all about our origins, the origins of humanity. How did we get started here on this planet? So, welcome back to my channel, you guys. I am so happy you are here. And for those of you who are new, my name is Ann Tucker. I'm a trance channel. And by that, I mean I go into a deep meditative state or trance. And from that state, I raise my frequency and my awareness up as high as I can go. I go a little higher, I connect, and then they come through. Angels come through with messages and healing that I share here with you guys on YouTube. And this week's message is a turn. They tend to kind of go in themes, and this is a new one where they're talking in much more depth about how we started, where are we from, and our relationship to beings from off planet. How do we relate to the earth and our beginnings with the earth? And then how do we relate to beings from off planet? So I feel like it really adds a lot to the conversation. I think you guys are going to really love the message. So yeah, let's dive in. They say, we wish to endow yourselves with a brief history of where you're from. With the culminating times of this now moment, you have been guided yourself to the forefront, the precipice of the new journey for humanity. But the entire construct of this experience has been guided through a history in its making. You have understood yourself to have been existing only for a certain period of time, lengthening depending on the dialogue of your interpretation of history and its factualization. But these stories in your mind are unsettled and figurative, representing what is true without knowledge of your real circumstances. You are born of light and have always been. In the instigation of this earth, you were brought into focus and into form. You have been here within her for the passage of her experience. All things of movement within her own body and tissues are brought into and through you. You were made for the experience of living on earth. It is as though thoughts have been born through you. You are the experience of her own thinking. Thus, she is the creator of humanity. But, and we will speak to this, at the same time, there are moments in the creation of what is you that have been instrumentally altered by the interference of other peoples. This you are aware of, that you have been brought to this earth as an assemblage of nations, of nation beings, of other types and stations of existence, who have brought to thee the meaningful parts of their own experience drawn into your flesh. What then appears as humanity is, in fact, an amalgamation of many things. As beings of the flesh, you exist to her, and because of her, the earth herself. And yet, you are altered and drawn into continuity with the universe and the universal experience of many beings because of the alterations of your genetic material. Thus, you have ties and belonging through her, and through these others to the experience of what is. We say the exigence of this information is in the practicing of your knowledge in application to understanding your history moving forward. You are moving toward a place and time where you will find belonging more naturally within the stars. Here you are of her, for her, by her, within her. The experience of being human and humanity is tied endlessly to the earth's patterns of moving and being. But you are intertwining more fully with your star patterns and becoming effectualized into the opening that shall become, so that the service of your existence is experienced as something not earthling, but of the universe, as she is becoming herself. The earth, in evolution, becomes a universal being as well. Thus, in the deployment of yourself into the field of knowledge that extends beyond this earth, the earth herself does reach into and through you to experience herself among others. As though she matures to a point of understanding, she has to play a part to play in the greater vista of creation. You are this thought, transferred from her through her into being, into the context of the universal understanding. Thus, the pattern that plays out between you and among you, the patterns of knowledge and understanding, become more open to the frequencies of what shall come. In the timing that is not yet distinguished, you will find yourselves living amongst each other in peaceful harmony. This then does permeate the existence of the earth with an air and influence that is welcoming to the experience of other minds, ways, and patterns of living. You then are open to encountering these other parts of yourself, these other methods of living, other types and species that exist far from this earth, and yet intertwined within your own being. These experiences that you shall have become regular and ongoing. They become a part of the fabric of your knowledge and understanding. It is not as if you are fleeting in this experience. It is a knowingness that derives itself from the first opportunity for sharing between you. What is knowledge you've had and been separated from? They will come and arrive in their pace and timing as you are opening and preparing yourselves for this new knowledge and understanding, as you are felt to be living in apparent harmony amongst yourselves. They shall arrive and dictate from their knowledge how you shall evolve more technologically, how you shall travel beyond the earth, how you shall field your own physicality without injury, how you shall mend yourselves more easily. These times will come and offer yourselves an integration into the fabric of the universe. All right. All right, you guys. So there we go. Very, very different message. And it looks like, so if somebody could put a couple comments on, make sure that we're still live, because like I said, on my end, it looks very strange. But I see Teresa just joined, so that is great. So if a couple more people, if you could just comment, perfect. It says, yep, and it is the normal angels, but I know this is really different. They're speaking in a much clearer voice. It's not as, like it is a different energy that came in. And so these are like my normal angels, but they will bring in a different voice when they're speaking about different issues. And this was definitely a different voice. And I was actually, it's like, I think this one is probably easier to follow. But it's definitely still them. So, and you're saying we can still hear you. Okay, fantastic. And you can still see me, hopefully. Perfect. Okay, you guys, I'm just going to keep on going. So yeah, really different, like I said, different strain, different message, but I feel like this message they wanted to deliver a little differently because I think of the type of topic that it is. I think they're trying to talk about, it's almost like that idea of tapping into school and learning and history and all the things that we've been told. And so I think they were really looking for clarity in the conversation. And so, yeah, so very, very, very interesting message. And can they make them all easier to follow, Suzanne? I know. Do you know, it's really like, so within the angels that I channel, there are different, almost like different personalities that are within the communal, within the essence of the angels that I channel. And this particular one does sometimes come through and is clearer, but then it is doing a different thing. Like I feel like in this message, there are still frequencies, but they're more, it's almost like they're not, sometimes the frequencies come in and they're really, really high. And those ones tend to be a little harder to understand. I feel like this one, they brought their frequency down a little lower. So it depends on what they're trying to accomplish with the message. They brought it a little closer to where we are, which makes it easier for us to follow, but it doesn't carry as much of their energy. So it's kind of a trade-off. So I think that's why sometimes they just go for it. And it's like sometimes they give messages that are like one big poem, you know what I mean, with 50 words that have 5 different meanings. And those are the really high vibe ones. And this one is like, okay, they wanted to bring us into the context of learning and of us understanding, like, how have we always talked about history and who are we and where do we come from and all of that, you know what I mean? So yeah, so that's why I think this one is a little easier to follow. I have been wondering, like there are certain angels that I work with. I had a dream not that long ago that there was an angel that came through me, that was birthed through me. And I don't know how this happens, but an angel was birthed through me onto the earth plane. And I know because the dream showed me, I'm in the dream, I'm sitting with a woman and she says, you're about to give birth. I'm going to go get preparations. And I was like, oh, I didn't know I was pregnant. And then as soon as I'm outside at a picnic table, as soon as she leaves, all of a sudden I feel the baby coming. I'm like, oh, I guess I am pregnant. And here it is, like it's coming. And so I feel the baby coming out and I reach down and I feel the head and I pull the baby up. And as I pull the baby up, it morphs into like a toddler. And the face is the face of an angel. And the face is kind of angular and it's clearly an angel. And the baby puts his arm, but in the air and goes, "Yay, I'm here." That's the whole dream. And they were telling me that there was an angel that came to the earth plane through me to help with these times, which amazes me, right? Absolutely amazes me. So I wonder, like, I feel like one of these days I'm going to tune in and ask that angel to speak and see what it was a she, to see what she has to say. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But interesting story, right? Interesting that, and I know she's here. And I know she's here to help out. I think it's to help out during periods where it could be harder to connect, so that there's always the connection. So I think she's here to help to make sure that there's never a time that I lose connection. No matter what happens with all the solar influences and stuff like that. So I think that's why she came. Yeah. So, okay, so let's break down the message and talk about it. Yeah, I know it was an amazing dream. I mean, it was totally amazing, and yeah, and it was and it's amazing to think that it happened. And the crazy thing is I didn't feel it. If only all childbirth could be like that. I didn't even feel it. It was painless. So yeah, all right. So let's start with the first paragraph. So they say, we wish to endow yourselves with a brief history of where you're from. So enticing, because there's lots of stories out there about this. Who created us? How are we here? All this influence from other beings. And they've talked about this a couple times in messages before. They say, with the culminating times of this now moment, you have guided yourself to the forefront, the precipice of a new journey for humanity. But the entire construct of this experience has been guided through a history in its making. So they're saying that this is a shift, but they're saying all points have led to here, that this isn't like we're all of a sudden like canceling out what we've done in the past and we're starting over again. We're not wiping the slate clean, getting rid of everything and starting again. This is one contextual, like our growth is one through line that moves into this next phase. So, but we are on the precipice of a great big new change. Yeah. And M says, I caught my daughter, but she didn't morph into a toddler. I know, totally. And then let's see. I finally made it to the live again. Yay, Monica. Just looking back to see who else I missed your messages. And a lot of you are giving me confirmation you can hear. That's fantastic. I don't know how it's happening, but it is. This happened last time. I was on a thing, and it was like my thing showed no connection, but the connection still worked. So if that's the angels, I say thank you. And then let me just look up here. And you guys were just giving me that confirmation. So that's fantastic. Okay, great. So next paragraph, they say, you have understood yourself to have been existing only for a certain period of time, lengthening depending on the dialogue of your interpretation of history and its factualization. But these stories in your mind are unsettled and figurative, representing what is true without knowledge of your real circumstances. So they're basically saying that we have a whole bunch of histories out there, most of which some of it are made up, some of which they're saying that that they say the time that we think we've been around, like the length of humanity, how long humanity has existed, that we say we know it's a certain period of time, but depending on who's telling the story, that time shifts, right? And so sometimes people think it's longer, some people think it's shorter, right? Depending on the dialogue of your interpretation of history and its factualization. So where do we find our facts, right? So everybody's got a different story about the origins of humanity. And they say these stories in your mind are unsettled, so in other words, nobody agrees, and figurative. And so they're not really, they say representing what is true. So it's a representation. It's almost like a fable, right? And representing what is true without knowledge of your real circumstances. So we are guessing at our origins. So, and you're saying I'm cutting in and out. I hope it sticks, you guys. If not, I will stop and come back in again. So let me know if you guys are having a hard time at all with the connection. Linda says, maybe they're reminding us that even when we feel like we've lost connection, we truly have not. We can never be disconnected. Yeah, I think that, especially to our own higher self connection. There may be times when we lose connection with our, with guides or some of our team, but your own higher self connection, you can never lose. So that is good. And why would we lose connection with our guides? If there's some reason why they can't get through or we can't get through. So there's a grid that supports our connection. And I know there have been times when that grid has turned off, temporarily and turn back on again. So something like that can happen. Oh, there you go. There. Oh, wait, hold on. You're talking about it. There's this. Cindy talks to angels where there would be a birth that starts everything. Where is this? It starts even with the concept of Christ-like consciousness. I am not sure about that. Let's see. And there will be a birth that restarts everything. There's sort of a broad statement of birth, because lots of things can be a birth. I know that we'll have a period of where, like, we have they said 3 days of darkness where things kind of turn off and turn on again. So maybe that could be what she's referring to. And then it says, yep, it's been cutting on and off. Okay, all good, great. All right, so let's keep on going. They go on to the next paragraph. They say, you are born of light and have always. So here's they're going to tell us what the truth is from their perspective. This is how they see it. You are born of light and have always been. In the instigation of this earth, so at the beginning of earth, when the earth began, you were brought into focus and into form. So literally from the beginning of earth, we were here into focus. As she came into focus, into form, think about the birth of a planet. It starts out as sort of gas, a collection of whatevers, and then that gradually, with the gravity, becomes more and more dense and more solid. So we came into form in the same way that she came into form. You have been here within her for the passage of her experience. So literally from her birth, from the birth of earth, we've been here too. Our souls have been here too. All things of movement within her own body and tissues are brought into and through you. So we are deeply intertwined with the earth and her experience. Our humanness is, right? Our being human, what it is to be humanity, is born through the earth and connected to the earth from her start. So then they say, you were made for the experience of living on earth. Our human bodies were. It is as though thoughts have been born through you. You are the experience of her own thinking. Thus, she is the creator of humanity. So, in other words, when she had her first thought, right? She created the collective. We are like her neurons. We are her thoughts. So, and we take on physical form because the earth physicalizes. So, and that doesn't mean that our souls were birthed by earth. Our souls were birthed by source, but our souls live and are tied to our human experience. And the human bodies, the experience of being human, the human collective consciousness, right? All connected to the earth. That is her thoughts. So super interesting to think that it's almost like, think about that idea of the acorn and the tree, that an acorn is just a tiny little seed, but it contains the entire blueprint of what that giant tree is going to be when it grows up. So when the acorn of the earth began, we were in it. Humanity was already in it, and it just took a while for us to express, just like it takes a while for the tree to express, for every different leaf to express. So we've always been there. Humanity was from the get-go. She was going to have thoughts, right? And we are those thoughts. So it's really interesting way of thinking about it. So all things of movement within her own body and tissues are brought into and through you. So we're deeply intertwined. I'm sorry, that was a previous paragraph. Moving on. And they say, and we will speak to this. At the same time, there are moments in the creation of what is you that have been instrumentally altered by the interference of other peoples. So the earth is not the only player in our creation. They say, this you are aware of because they've talked about it before. Then they say in previous messages, they say that you have been brought to this earth as an assemblage of nations, of nation beings. And so by nations, they don't mean like, the earth nations. They're talking about other planets, other types of beings, non-earth beings, right? Of nation beings, of other types and stations of existence, who have brought to thee the meaningful parts of their own experience drawn into your flesh. So it's almost like we are like a seed bank. You know what I mean? Like all these different other races said, okay, you've got this amazing DNA, and we're going to put in little bits of ourselves in your DNA so that you are made up of all of us. And why did they do that? Was it like, it's hard to say, like why. They don't really address the why. It's an interesting question. Like I've heard, maybe they talked about it in the past. Maybe it was for like preserving their species or connecting us to the universe. I don't really know why. Why did they do that? But they did. This is what they're saying. They did this. So then going on, they say, what then appears as humanity is, in fact, an amalgamation of many things. Amalgamation is just like a collection, right? A bunch of different things brought together. So humanity is an amalgamation of many things. As beings of the flesh, you exist to her and because of her, the earth herself. And yet you are altered and drawn into continuity with the universe and the universal experience of many beings because of the alterations of your genetic material. Thus, you have ties and belonging through her and through these others to the experience of what is. So think about that as a metaphor to our desire for unity. That how do we get to the oneness with all things? Well, it's part of it is, if we are physical beings, is allowing all things to be part of who we are in a physical way. So it's interesting how it all kind of fits together, that if we are going to be part of the collective, a part of a larger community, then we embrace and become part of that physically, emotionally, intellectually, right, in all ways. Yeah. So very, very interesting. And then let's see, what do they say? Then they say, we say the existence or exigence, in other words, the urgency, we say the exigence of this information, the urgency, is in the practicing of your knowledge in application. Where is that? Practicing of your knowledge in application to understanding your history moving forward. You are moving toward a place in time where you will find belonging more naturally within the stars. So it really fits that as we're going through this process of expansion and a desire for oneness with all things, that our attention and our focus moves beyond the earth out into the world. It's almost like, imagine that the earth is in the stage, and I don't know how old the earth is, like in terms of what, if we were to say she's a human, is she an old woman? Is she a new baby? You know what I mean? So maybe she's like a toddler, and there's a stage of development, and remember, our bodies are a model for all truth in the universe. So in our bodies, there's a stage we go through where we think everything is an extension of us. We think our parents, like as a tiny, tiny baby, you don't know the difference between you and everything else. You think the parents are part of you, like that almost like they're part of your physical body, like everything, you think everything is you, which is funny because that's what we're trying to get back to. But there's a stage in our development where we understand, we all of a sudden have the awareness that not everybody is feeling the same thing that we're feeling, and that not everybody is us, and that everybody else has their own desires and their own will and their own experience, right? So we have this separation. And so our focus goes from everything is about me to, oh, wow, look what's out here in the world. And so if the earth is at her toddler stage, if she's going through that process right now, she's going to be going from, and we are her thoughts, we're going to go from a phase where everything is focused in on ourselves, where we're just really engrossed with our politics and our weather and our whatever it is that's happening on earth. And all of a sudden we're going to stop and realize, well, wait a minute, like what's out there? Like looking out at the world, it's like that. That's the best metaphor I can think of. And I think it's probably, I think if you look at what is the lifetime of a star or a planet, there's probably some description of like phases that they go through. And so it'd be interesting to see, is the earth in her toddler phase? Yeah. So, all right, we go into the next paragraph here. Here you are of her, for her, by her, within her. The experience of being human and humanity is tied endlessly to the earth's patterns of moving and being. But you are intertwining more fully with your star patterns and becoming effectualized into the opening that shall become, so that the service of your existence is experienced as something not earthling, but of the universe, and she is become herself. The earth in evolution becomes a universal being as well. So that is basically saying, that as we start to understand, and they say that we are intertwining more fully with our star patterns. So we are starting to understand this part that's inside of us, our sort of genetic connection to all these other beings. And as we become more connected, the earth because we are her. So our experience is her experience. Yeah, she becomes a universal being as well. So this is all, I feel like it's very intertwined. The idea of oneness and unity among us that then helps us to graduate to oneness and unity with all things, including what's out there in the world, right? In the bigger universe. When we think of world, we think of just our Earth, but world becomes everything, I think. Yeah. And let me see what you guys are saying. And then here we are. You say, what an interesting idea, Earth in the toddler phase. Yeah. And then M says, yep, look into spiral dynamics, especially anything from Steve McDonald on it. He talks about those stages. And so what you just said makes a lot of sense fitting with that. Very cool. Mary says, it's weird that egocentric is what we call babies during that stage, although alternatively it could be thought of as being just the opposite of that. We are all one. I was thinking the same thing, Mary, as I was talking about that, because you're right. When we're taught that, we're like, oh, they're egocentric. But is it just that they are losing themselves because they're becoming indoctrinated into the earth, right? That they have the oneness and then they lose it as they get older. So, and then we finally try to work our way back to it again. Good question. I don't know. We should ask some babies. Rebecca says, do you think this relates to how different countries are in different life phases? I think it's yes, absolutely. Because I think it's like they said, everything in our existence is this idea of kind of holographic, where the small thing is then a replication of the big thing. So in the same way that a particular country goes through phases of life, so does the earth, so do we. So, everything goes through the same period of development. So yeah, 100%. I think that fits. Yeah. All right, so here's what they say next. They say, thus, in the deployment of yourself into the field of knowledge that extends beyond this earth, in other words, as we get engaged in learning outside of the earth about these other beings and our relationship to them, they say the earth herself does reach into and through you to experience herself among others, as though she matures to a point of understanding that she has a part to play in the greater vista of creation. You are this thought, transferred from her through her into being, into the context of the universal understanding. So basically, yeah, they're saying as we grow into the universe, she then does too. So super interesting. Okay, going on. Thus, the patterns that play out between you and among you, the patterns of knowledge and understanding that become more open to the frequencies of what shall come. Become more open to the frequencies of what shall come. In other words, more open to interacting with non-earth beings. In the timing that is not yet distinguished, in other words, we don't know exactly when, you will find yourselves living amongst each other in peaceful harmony. When this does permeate the existence of the earth with an air and influence that is welcoming to the experience of other minds, ways, and patterns of living. So in other words, when we achieve peace on earth, when we learn to live in peaceful harmony, that then opens the door to us interacting with beings beyond the planet. And so we think, oh gosh, that means like it's going to be forever. How are we ever going to get peace on earth? But remember, the wave of light is supposed to shift our frequency. And the angels have said we will achieve peace on earth. So this is not something that is so far away, which is to me, like you could just like mic drop right there. That could be like all they say in the message is you will have peace on earth. We're like, yay, okay, good. That would be amazing. You know what I mean? But then the cherry on top is, and you will have these beneficent or beings that come and help you, which is super, super good when we get there. So, but it sets a pattern, a frequency that we have to have. And I think that's more is that we have to be in harmony in order for them to come and interact with us. And that makes sense because think about what would happen if we were at war with one another and these beings came to the planet. And then it would be the big thing would be who owns them. You know what I mean? Who owns what they share? Who has the best relationship with them? You know what I mean? It would be a fight between nations. So yeah, so it makes sense. We have to be getting along. We have to be harmonized before they can come. Or we would all break out. It makes me think there was an old movie from a long time ago about a Coke can that falls like in among like an Aboriginal community, and how I think they end up like fighting over the Coke can about who owns the Coke can. So it's bringing in something from the outside can be very disruptive to a community. So then they go on to say, you then are open to encountering these other parts of yourself. Yeah, so once we're harmonized, we are open to it. These other methods of living, other types and species that exist far from this earth, and yet intertwined within your own being. these experiences that you shall have become regular and ongoing. In other words, that it's not going to be a one-time thing where they come and visit. It's going to be a thing where we now have a relationship with them and we are working with them, which is, oh yeah, the movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, totally. Um, uh, so we'll be working with them. It sounds like it is not as if you are fleeting in this experience. So like it's a connection that we have where they're working with us. It is a knowingness that derives itself from the first opportunity for sharing between you what is knowledge you've had and been separated from. So it's going to be like a remembering where we all of a sudden understand something that's been true all along, that maybe we have a hard time feeling it or seeing it because of all the things we're told, right? If it's almost like that old metaphor that you see so often, you'll see videos where there's like the Tibetan monk that's pouring tea into a cup, and he pours it till the cup is full, and you get a full cup and you try to add more tea and it just spills out into the saucer. And it's that idea that if the cup is full, you can't fit anything else in it. And we are full of stories about our creation, right? There's so many stories about our creation that are we really open to hearing that we are this sort of seed garden for alien species. Not a lot. There's going to be a lot of people who are really opposed to that, that don't like that story. So their cup may be full on this one. So I think it's what they're saying here is that it's a knowledge we've had and been separated from, but it's going to be hard to deny when they're on our doorstep. They go on to say, they will come and arrive in their pace and timing, as you are opening and preparing yourselves for this new knowledge and understanding. As you are felt to be living in apparent harmony among yourselves, they shall arrive and dictate from their knowledge how you shall evolve more technologically, how you shall travel beyond the earth, how you shall field your own physicality without injury, how you shall mend yourselves more easily. So this is super exciting. So it's like they are going to come and help us in terms of our wellness, right? Our technology, helping us to learn how to travel off planet, right? There's sounds like it's going to be an amazing blessing when they come. And then they say, these times will come and offer yourselves an integration into the fabric of the universe. So super, super cool message. And you guys know we started getting these messages. Was it last year? I think it was in the fall of last year that we had our first sort of alien message. And at the time I was like, oh boy, it was another one of those that I had to kind of brace myself to step out and start talking about this stuff, because it definitely doesn't match most of our creation stories. And but I think at this point I'm kind of like, it's just they're consistent, right? They haven't backed down. They're like, yep, you gotta say it. This is it. This is what's happening. And it does all fit. So it fits with our understanding of, and I think one of the things to me that adds credibility to it is the thing that they say, whenever you want knowledge, look at yourself. Like, look at, our physical bodies are the metaphor, or are a perfect representation of what's happening in the bigger picture. And so I think that idea that, look at this development that we have, where we go through that development process of what we used to call the ego child moves into the self, learning to identify and see others as separated from itself. Well, it makes sense that the earth will go through that we as humanity will go through that, where we start to look outside of our own earth and look beyond. It matches. It's a perfect fit. So to me, that it helps it to land for me a bit more. Hopefully that helps for you guys too. Yeah. And then let's see. And Rebecca says, aren't they already here? Probably. They probably are already here. And I know there's a lot of people especially on YouTube and spiritual communities on YouTube, who have very close relationships with those beings and who are here potentially as representatives of those beings. So yeah, I think so. I wonder what the timeline is. Will we still be here? I believe so. Yeah, actually, I am pretty certain we will, because of other messages that angels have given us. So I'm pretty sure we will see it, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I'm actually very psyched for that. I think it's actually not that far off, to be honest. So because we have the flash of light, you get the 3 waves that are coming. So each wave is supposed to be stronger in its intensity, and these are supposed to be shifting us and bringing us into this state where we are connected to one another, where we have this telepathic bond, which is going to help us to achieve peace on earth. And so once we're there, then they can come, right? So, and I know that we should be traveling off planet, like in my lifetime. So That's what I have seen and understood. So, and I'm sure I could be wrong, but that's certainly what they've said and what I've seen. So, which is amazing to think about, just amazing. Yeah. And M says, I believe this is specifically saying that they'll be here and not hidden, disguised. Exactly. How far off? I don't know. I think within the next, I think by the 2030s, things will be drastically different. I think the wave of light is close. I think a lot, like the angels keep saying, we are on the precipice. We are on the front, like the doorstep of major events. And they showed us in one of our recent messages, they were trying to show us, look, like at where you are right now, like just to see like that we talked about the poly crisis. We talked about that there are so many things happening around us that are so disruptive. There's so much change. Like who would have guessed, in terms of what's happening right now for the U.S. election and what our politics have looked like. If you went back 10 years, 20 years, you would have never guessed we would be in the condition that we're in right now. When I first got the message that the U.S. would be separating, that it would no longer be the United States, that it would be several different groups, it sounded so far-fetched, right? I was like, oh my gosh, I had to do this serious, like, okay, I had to share it, but at the same time, I'm like, ooh, that's a stretch. And now it doesn't seem like such a stretch, which is, I'm incredulous. I'm amazed by that, right? That it doesn't, and that's within a couple, I think I got that message first back like in 2020. So it has not been that long. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden we see there's more and more discussion about this kind of thing. And not in mainstream major media outlets, they're talking about that the term civil war has been has increased in the frequency of being used exponentially. Like it's crazy. So this is entering the concept of the U.S. separating has now entered the mainstream dialogue. So who would have thought? You know what I mean? And that's in just 2 years. 4 years. 4 years. So how close are we? I think, so what they're trying to say in that message, where they were showing us all the steps that have been happening, like showing us like, hey, look at this and look at this, like look at all the change around you. And there's several things they've told us about, starting really the messages, like this kind of message started coming in 2020. Some of the things they've talked about then have now come to pass. And I see those as like breadcrumbs for us to see the change happening around us, because we just are that frog in the pot of boiling water, is we just get used to it and we don't recognize the change that's happening around us. So I mean, the most recent, one of the biggest things that, like, they talked back then about the banking crisis, back when there was no sign of a banking crisis, and the idea of having banks fail and any kind of large number felt like sort of like a hard, call back to the Great Depression. And I thought, wow, that's a stretch. How is that ever going to happen? But I shared the information, and then here we are, in 2023, the banking crisis started and is not yet over. And it happened exactly like they described it. So there's a breadcrumb. They said that it would be large depositors, but that they would get their money back. And then, they talked about it multiple times. So I think there's more involved in it, and there's more coming. But the fact is, it's another breadcrumb to say, hey, be aware. Changes all around you, unraveling all around you. It's coming, it's happening. So, and that's just in this period. They talked about recently, maybe 6 months ago, they said that the shipping would be a catastrophic industry. And then now it's just happened within the last 6 months since that message that we've had the two major shipping canals on the planet that are critical to the transfer of goods, to the shipping of goods, are down to incredibly reduced capacity, like 25% of what they normally would, because of war, because of drought. Right. And so will there be other things? They didn't specify. I assume when they talked about catastrophic shipping, I assumed it would be because of the tsunamis or weather, something like that. The ports would be destroyed. Or it wasn't. It was something much more mundane, but equally devastating. Right. So war and drought. So like I said, maybe that will continue on as a theme, this idea of shipping being catastrophic and that it being increasingly difficult to ship goods around the planet. I don't know. But and then you guys know there's lots of other things that they have given us, these breadcrumbs all along. They told us about the chicken disease before the bird flu happened. They told us about the truck drivers being so pivotal that they would abandon their routes. They told us that way back when. And then look at how that is still a thing, right? That truck drivers are still protesting and being, a factor on the political landscape. So all of these things but it is, if we can just look at each one, and when we're in it, we're just like, that's just a thing. It's another thing. It's another headline. But remember back, A decade ago, when we had a crisis, when we had Hurricane Katrina, it was in the news for weeks, even months it was in the news, but front page for weeks. And nowadays we have crises of an equal scale happening all over the world on a daily basis, and we talk about them for like a day because there's a new one tomorrow. And so, yeah, the poly crisis, crazy, crazy, crazy. And so, yeah, is it coming? I see it, and they're trying to remind us, to make us see, to look at it, to notice, wow, there is a lot of change going on individually in our individual lives and in the world. A lot of change. And in the social movements, right, that we have seen things that people could have gotten away with, a decade ago, they can't anymore. Things that would have been accepted or tolerated or shoved under the rug can't be anymore because of things rising to the surface, right? The Me Too movement, right? The Black Lives Matter movements, these different movements that have created and so much emphasis on, people now are conscious of their pronouns. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different world from a decade ago. So, and there was a lot of abuses that were swept under the rug or were tolerated or overlooked, and they aren't anymore. So massive change within humanity. And yeah, we're still crazy polarized, and we've got war breaking out everywhere, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But are we on the way? Yeah. And we are here for the ride. Like, that's why we came, right? We are here for this ride. And we will be protected. We got to stay in love in our hearts. Stay in love. Stay in love for all that happens, and to see the spiritual purpose of all of this, right? And to know that we are being guided, right, towards our evolution, that we have to let these structures fall apart because they're holding us in place. And we have to let everything melt. We have to let it all unwind so that we can evolve ourselves, so that we can find our freedom. Yeah. So is it going to be hard? Yeah. Like, it's already been hard. We've all experienced loss. And the angels remind us, like they tell, how do we get through this? How do we do this? We have to stay focused on love, right? We have to try not to be attached to the things that we lose, try not to be attached to the way things are. And we have to be open in our expectations, right? Be ready to see things we've never seen before. Try to be present as much as we can, not seeing through our brain, seeing through our heart. And then we have to learn to navigate through our heart, to be guided by our heart, not by our head, and let the head serve the heart. So in a nutshell, that's like everything they've said in the last 4 years. Kind of. Yeah. So, and Rebecca's saying, and the break of the United States could be a physical break from climate earthquakes. Yeah, that could be part of it too, for sure. Lisa's saying trucker striking is always what gets me. It's so specific and unusual. They also, other random things they've mentioned was that we would have difficulty transferring money. And then think about what happened with this SWIFT, where Russia was cut off from the SWIFT banking system. They were not allowed to transfer money. And they also said that the U.S. would lose its political hegemony. And when that happened, when they were no longer allowed to transfer money, Russia started negotiating in other currencies. So they went and started doing deals with other countries, not in U.S. dollars. So the angels said all of that. And then piece by piece by piece, little drops, little reminders, this is coming. Look at, these are like breadcrumbs to follow. See it happening. Yeah, totally amazing. So Rebecca says, choose to be here. Yep. Em says, also hold compassion for ourselves when we do feel loss, sadness, etc. Self-compassion is essential here, is 100%, because that's the move against judgment, and the release of our karma is self-compassion, right? The integration of all that we are. So thank you so much for mentioning that. One of the most important things, right? One of the most important. All right, you guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm going to go enjoy our time here. I hope you guys have a fabulous weekend. Sending you lots of love, and I will see you next Friday live.